Jerry Ashton again, WGRNradio.com, 15 Minutes of Fact. And we are pursuing the topic of citizen journalists based on the fact that an organization by the name of United Republic and Digital Citizen held a video submission contest to find two citizen reporters to send to the 2012 Republican and Democratic National Conventions, obviously to cover the issue of politics, but especially money in politics. Not that there's much of that there. So we're lucky to have an excellent second half of a duo, a person that is in the Midwest, prides himself and puts it out quite publicly that he's a centrist, which of course makes him an oddity in America. And we're going to be talking with Solomon Kleinsmith today, and we're going to find out what it's like to be selected as a citizen journalist, what that really means, what his intentions are at both the Democrat and the Republican conventions, and see if we can't learn a little bit. So, Solomon, introduce yourself and a little bit about your background.
Well, let's see, where do I start? From Omaha, Nebraska. I grew up in the area. I left for a few years to go to college and do some other things, but I've lived here most of my life. I'm 32. Let's see. I as far as the blogging thing goes, I've been active on the internet since before the internet had color. I actually make a joke when I talk about this because when I first heard about the internet, you couldn't buy it. So me and a friend figured out how to hack into our local college to get on the internet, kind of like that old War Games movie.
Which college was that?
University of Nebraska at Omaha.
And
yeah.
what type of high technology were you using at that moment?
Oh, you know what? I think it was something like a 1200 baud modem.
It's people like you that destroy America.
I don't know, or get into arguments on IRC. I don't know.
So basically, you have you started out in the black and white days of television, except you translated that experience to the internet.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why I never really got much into blogging. I was really active on message boards all the way from the advent, really, of not really the advent of the internet, but the advent of popular internet.
Uh-huh.
And I'd done stuff that you could have called blogging. Like I'd write some sort of mini article for a website, but before they even called it blogging. And I never really started my own blog until 2010. I'd written for. I was sort of a moderate libertarian back in college, and then that changed, and I sort of, my views evolved over time, and you could call me a blue dog, and I blogged for a site here in Nebraska called newnebraska.net for a little bit, and it's still guest submissions, and then in 2009 I was doing some guest blogging for a site called Donkel Font. Which you would probably like. It's kind of they try to keep it light there sometimes, and
it would appear to me that the Democrat side of the aisle and the Republican side of the aisle would have to term you as someone who's confused.
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm not any more confused than anybody else. It's just I don't that neither side fits me.
Well,
Unlike countries where you have lots of different options that basically fit everybody, we just have two, and it's silly to think that just two options would fit everybody.
Well, I find it interesting that there was a contest of quite a few people that wanted to secure this position as a visitor to the conventions and to write about it as citizen journalists. So you managed to survive that. You came out as one of two that are going to be involved in that. So what did you think of that process to begin with, and does it make sense to create a citizen journalist to send to these two disparate conventions?
Yeah, I like the idea. I bet you they were worried about getting some people who were well spoken and knowledgeable on the issue, but I think there's quite a few people out there that are what you called in that email you sent me amateur professionals or professional amateurs or something to that nature. Mm-hmm. It was funny because I fought the urge to be political for a long time because I really just don't like political people very much. and most of them I dislike strongly in my experience, volunteering for Democratic and Republican campaigns over the years. And but at the same time, I love politics, and I'm one of those nerds that I actually read think tank papers for fun, and so I know a lot about campaign finance, and so they were looking for somebody that they thought would be fair, and regardless of whether I support somebody, I'll try to go after them when I think they're doing something wrong. Like Ben Nelson here in Nebraska, he's a good example. He's a moderate. I agree with him on the issues a lot, but he's dirty, and so I go after him. And so I think they saw somebody that they thought would be fair to both, and who was interested in the issue of campaign finance and knowledgeable about the issue of campaign finance. And with me and Jessica, I think they found two people that would be able to work together well.
Well, Jessica Eise, as you already know, in meeting your counterpart, having just secured a master's degree, being unemployed, student debt, outraged by all the money that's spent in this so-called campaign. So she brings a different point of view to it. Yours is really, I think, probably more sophisticated in the sense that you've grounded yourself in this. You've been on both sides of the aisle, and I compliment you for that.
Sure. I mean, well, I don't know about sophisticated, just maybe deeper, because this is another funny thing. I actually ran what they would now term a super PAC before that term was really used. I had an executive director position at a nonprofit, and we focused on voter registration, but technically it was a 501c4 that raised large amounts of money from a handful of donors, and we didn't have to release our donor information, which is pretty much what people mean when they say super PAC. And we might not have technically been a super PAC, but that's what people mean when they say super PAC.
Well, did you do any research on the people that were vetting you? I mean, somebody somehow or another, this thing showed up in your life. Are you
talking about this contest here? Or
yes, I'm talking about the people that, of course, put it together.
Well, I was already a little bit familiar with United Republic. I think it had something to do with Buddy Roemer, who I know is big on this issue, and who I was kind of hoping would win the Americans Elect ticket. That obviously fell apart. But I was vaguely familiar with them, and then I looked into them a little bit more, and then I looked at Digital Citizen, and I looked at Link TV, and I mean, they seem like straight up people, so that's why I applied.
What I enjoyed in my conversations with them is that when they went through the selection process, and they fortunately had enough monies in the fund to be able to bring two people on board,
Yep.
It was on a hands-off basis. They chose you on the basis of intellect, enthusiasm, drive, possibilities, capabilities. But I've been told by Jessica that it's a hands-off thing. They're not telling you what to say, how to say it. And one of those rare things where you don't have corporate America determining what you say based on the advertising dollars that you might frighten away.
Yeah, right. Well, they're a nonprofit cable or satellite network, so they really don't have to worry about that. I'm sure they have donors, but it's the from my understanding, I mean, they'd like us to focus on campaign finance, which is perfectly fine with me. They don't have to twist my arm at all to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what is your opinion about Citizen United then?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the only way to really there's ways to eat at the edges of it, probably legislatively, but that's going to be pretty hard with the two parties that control Washington. And but maybe we'll be able to do a little bit of that. But I think eventually it is going to have to be taken down with a constitutional amendment, which is going to be even harder. It's possible though, because when you get to something that has the support of 80+% of the American people, a constitutional amendment is possible. It just needs to happen.
Well, speaking of things that need to happen, as you know, the orientation of 15 Minutes of Fact is that of locating people or circumstances, individuals who have in some fashion either carried the Occupy banner or have been performing things that Occupy considers to be part of its mission as well. One of those, of course, is campaign reform. One is getting money out of politics, following the money to the bankers. Their first birthday is coming up. Have you had any experience with Occupy, and how would you compare what you are doing compared to what their agenda appears to be?
I have. Just like the Tea Party, I followed them from the beginning, and I tried to be more informed. I think some of the stereotypes about left-wing Occupy type stuff are somewhat accurate, but not all of them. Kind of like the Tea Party. I've been to some Tea Party events, and they're nice people. They're just really right-wing. But I've been to a few Occupy movement events, and I follow some stuff on some of the bigger Occupy websites, and I don't have a whole lot of overlap with Occupy movement on the issues, on how they want to solve the issues. I agree with Occupy movement that there are big, huge problems with money and politics and things like that, and corruption. It's just how I want to fix them is usually different. But on campaign finance, it's one of those issues where I overlap a lot with them.
How would you compare and contrast the Tea Party and Occupy, in your experience?
There's very little well, campaign finance is one of those issues that it can be fairly termed, and I really use this term sparingly, but transpartisan, because it doesn't really matter where you are in the spectrum. When you get to 80+% of people supporting something, you're going to be having support all across the spectrum. And that's how campaign finance works. But besides that, there's really not a whole lot of other things that the Tea Party and Occupy movement have agreement with. You have to get really into specifics to find things like that with them.
Well, I think that you're going to be a great example of somebody who can stand in the middle and very delicately put your toe in the waters in each one of these fountains of presumed knowledge and wisdom.
Well, thank you.
Well, I want to also give some credit to the people that found you. We're talking about UnitedRepublic.org. We're talking about linkedtv.org, and to find you there, they have linkedtv.org/voices up. Is there any other site that you'd like to send people to give them a background that's preparing you to go to these conventions?
Let's see here. I wish I would have pulled up a list. What's that new organization that Buddy Romer started? The Reform. Oh, geez, the Reform Project. I think
the Reform Project. So,
right.
if somebody Googled Buddy Romer, how's that spelled again?
Roemer.
Roemer. Roehmer. I'm not quite sure.
I don't think there's an H in there. I think it's Roemer. Yeah.
So it is Romer. Okay.
Yep.
And what makes him of interest to you?
Well, Buddy Romer, he wasn't my first pick for the Americans Elect ticket. I like David Walker, but Buddy Romer, he's really strong on campaign finance. Personally, his campaign only accepted $100 donations. I thought that was low. I thought he should have gone up to either 500 or 1,000 and just banned bundlers, which is really where the problem is. Individual donors isn't where the problem is. But that was a principled stand that I respected. And after his campaign, didn't really go anywhere, he decided to stay in the fight. And campaign finance was really the big thing in his campaign that attracted a lot of people. And he had a surprising amount of support in the Occupy movement, even though on other issues he was pretty darn conservative. And so he decided to start the Reform Project, which I think focuses primarily, if not entirely, on campaign finance. But there are other organizations. I'm just drawing a blank right now what they are.
Well, why don't we give people information about how to reach you so that they can follow up this conversation with some direct communications, if you like. Do you have an email address?
Sure. You can email me. It's really long, but Solomon Kleinsmith at riseofthecenter.com.
You never could figure out a shorter thing. How about Saul K?
I know. I'm actually. This is funny you say this. Rise of the Center is being shut down. It's in the process of being shut down. It was the blog I started in 2010, but I'm switching to a new site, and if this interview was a week from now, I'd be able to tell you what the name of it is. It's just not ready for public consumption yet.
Well, let's talk about, to complete our interview here, something of hope for people like you who are would-be citizen journalists who have blogged, but I understand that you've actually been able to turn it into some form of cash flow as well. So tell us about that, and I'm sure that people will Google the heck out of Solomon.Kleinsmith, Kleinsmith for the audience. So how did you go about turning blogs into profit, if indeed we can call it that?
Sure. I did make some money off of my blog, but there was a point where I took the ads down because I wasn't making much, and I was just putting it right back into the blog to make it bigger with, like, Google search ads and things like that. The new site I'm going to try to make more money off of, and it's a little bit more ambitious. It's got, forums and groups and personal profiles, very simple social networking things. But really, I mean, I made money like any other blog does. I just put advertising up. I'm just getting to the point with how large the following is that I probably could go after some targeted advertising, asking, centrist moderate groups like No Labels or I don't know if some of the think tank type groups even advertise, but after the new site gets up and gets solid and stable, then I'll probably do a little bit of that. But most of the money where I made is I ended up getting a freelancing gig at WNYC, which is the NPR station in New York City. They have a political sub-site called It's a Free Country, and it's sort of affiliated with Brian Lehrer. And they didn't have a centrist on their team of bloggers, and I was coming into town from Nebraska to go to the No Labels launch back in December of 2010, and they had seen my tweets about it, I think is where they originally found me, and they wanted me to write a piece as to why some guy from Nebraska was flying across the country to go to a launch of a political organization. And I wrote a piece for them, and they liked it, and they asked me to, come on as a freelancer, and I've been doing that for the last 2 years.
Well, that's super. Well,
yeah, as far as that line of progression from complete hobby blogger to amateur professional,
yeah.
From what I've understood from talking to bloggers that are more successful than me, that's pretty normal, that progression. You just sort of, you got to keep your ear to the ground and try to find places that you think like bigger websites to write for. And even if they're not paying you, just getting a bigger audience. And then, another year on down the line, try to find another place that's bigger that might pay you, and then, move up the ladder. I think I stumbled across it partially on accident, partially because I kind of put more time and energy into it than most bloggers do.
Well, the nice thing about, standing in the middle of a freeway, eventually you're going to get run over. So I compliment you for doing exactly that. And I'm also going to complete this segment of 15 Minutes of Fact by thank you, and I want to also thank UnitedRepublic.org, your friends, of course, over at linktv.org,
yep,
and the people that have put this together. So once again, Mr. Solomon Kleinsmith, I want to thank you so much for your time, and God bless, and have a great time bothering people at those conventions.
I'm looking forward to it.
Take care.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.